The day my divorce was finalized, my husband stood in that courtroom and told the judge. And I remember his exact words. "She contributed nothing. She is nothing. She is nothing." He said it with such confidence, such certainty. The way people speak when they have never once considered that the woman standing quietly beside them might have been paying very close attention. I did not cry. I did not flinch. I simply opened the folder my attorney placed in front of me, and I slid it across the table. Inside was a schedule of assets. A consulting business, registered in my name, 18 months prior. A savings account he never knew existed. And a detailed record of every financial decision he had made in our 8-year marriage that he thought I was too busy to notice. His attorney asked for a recess. They took 45 minutes. When they came back, his lawyer's face had changed completely. Before I tell you how we got to that room and why I had spent 2 years preparing for a moment my husband never believed would come, I want to ask you something. If you have ever been told you were nothing by someone who was supposed to see everything you were, drop a comment below. Tell me where you are listening from today. I love knowing. And if this is your first time here, please subscribe. Because this story is just beginning. Let me take you back to the spring of 2016. To a small apartment in Austin, Texas, where a woman named Claire thought she had finally found her person. Claire Dawson was 30 years old. She worked as a project manager for a mid-sized real estate development firm downtown. She was precise by nature. The kind of person who color-coded her planner, not because anyone told her to, but because it made the week feel manageable. She paid her bills a week early. She kept a journal on her nightstand. Every evening before she slept, she wrote down one thing she was grateful for. She was not naive. She had simply never met anyone who saw her precision as a threat rather than an asset. Marcus Webb came into her life the way most significant things do, without announcement. A mutual friend's birthday dinner at a rooftop bar on South Congress. He arrived 20 minutes late, apologized once, and then spent the rest of the evening asking Claire questions that nobody else at that table had thought to ask her. What was the most challenging project she had ever managed? Did she think Austin's rapid development was actually helping the city or just changing who could afford to live there? Had she read anything recently that genuinely shifted how she saw the world? She remembered driving home that night on the 35, windows down, and thinking, he actually listened. They were married 2 years later. A small outdoor ceremony at a ranch in the hill country. 60 guests. String lights strung between oak trees. The kind of Texas evening where the heat finally breaks around 7 and the air smells like cedar and possibility. Claire wore her grandmother's earrings. Marcus cried during his vows. She loved him for that. In the early years, they were a team in the truest sense. Claire kept working. Marcus had launched a small property consulting firm, and she helped him in the evenings and on weekends. Chasing invoices. Building out client proposals. Creating spreadsheets that tracked every project from the first conversation to the final closing. She did not ask for credit. She did not need it. It was their life, and she was proud of what they were building together. The shift was gradual. So gradual that if you asked Claire now to name the exact moment things changed, she would pause. She would look somewhere past you. And eventually she would say, "I think it was when he stopped asking me questions." It was not dramatic. It was not loud. It was something quieter and more corrosive than anything loud could ever be. A slow erasure. Marcus began introducing her at events as my wife, rather than by her name. He stopped mentioning her contributions to the business. When friends asked how the firm was growing, he talked about his instincts, his contacts, his vision. Claire noticed. She always noticed. She simply did not yet know what to do with what she saw. The year Claire turned 36 was the year she started paying a different kind of attention. It began with a phone call she was not supposed to hear. Marcus was in his home office, with the door pulled almost, but not quite shut. Claire was in the hallway, on her way to the kitchen, carrying a glass of water she had just poured for him. She heard him say a name she did not recognize. Jenna. He said it with a softness, that had been missing from his voice for longer than she cared to count. She stood in that hallway for what felt like a very long time. Then she walked to the kitchen, set the glass down on the counter, and sat at the table with her hands flat on the surface. Completely still. She did not confront him. Not that night. Not the next morning. Marcus had moved his phone off the shared charger in the bedroom. He was now charging it exclusively in his office. He had changed his email password. She discovered this by accident when she tried to forward herself a contract from his laptop. He had started attending what he called client dinners on Wednesday evenings, which had never previously been part of his schedule. She also noticed, for the first time with real clarity, something about their finances. Claire had always managed the household accounts. It was simply how things had been organized. She was better with numbers. He was better with people. The division had felt natural. Reasonable even. But she had never looked closely at the business accounts. She had always assumed that was his domain. Now she looked. What she found did not shock her immediately. It confused her first. Which she later came to understand was worse. The confusion meant she had to sit with the numbers long enough to truly understand what she was seeing. And the longer she sat with them, the clearer the picture became. Marcus's firm had been profitable for 3 consecutive years. Considerably profitable. But the distributions he had taken out of the business, the money transferred directly to his personal account, were nearly double what he had ever mentioned to her when they talked about money. The gap between what she knew about and what actually existed ran to somewhere in the region of $180,000. She sat in the kitchen of the house they owned together in Travis Heights, and she thought about the precision she had spent her whole life practicing. The color-coded planners. The bills paid early. The journals. The years of late evenings building spreadsheets on his behalf. And she thought, very quietly, very clearly, I need an attorney. Before I tell you what Claire's attorney discovered when she formally requested full financial disclosure, and what Marcus said the moment he realized what she had already done, I want to pause here. Have you ever been in a moment where you finally saw something clearly? Something that had been right in front of you the whole time? Tell me about it in the comments below. I read every single one. And if you have not subscribed yet, please do. Because what happens next in Claire's story is the part that changes everything. The attorney Claire found was a woman named Patricia Owens, a family law specialist. Her office was on the 6th floor of a building just off Congress Avenue. Clean desk. Framed law degree on the wall. The kind of quiet that felt deliberate. She had the kind of steady composure that Claire immediately recognized. The composure of someone who had sat across from a great deal of pain and learned not to be unsettled by it. Claire laid everything out. The spreadsheets. The printed bank statements. The screenshots of the business accounts. The name Jenna, though she admitted she did not yet have documentation around that particular situation. Patricia listened without interrupting. Then she said, "You've done more preparation than most people come to me with. That matters." She walked Claire through the process clearly. In Texas, divorce falls under community property law. That means assets and debts acquired during the marriage are generally considered equally owned by both spouses. If Marcus had been concealing income or business profits, the court had significant tools to investigate, including appointing a forensic accountant to examine the business records directly. "He doesn't know you're here?" Patricia asked. "No," Claire said. "And I'd like to keep it that way for now." Patricia nodded once. "Then we move carefully." What followed over the next 9 months was the most disciplined period of Claire's life. She went home each evening and behaved exactly as she always had. Making dinner. Asking about his day. Maintaining the ordinary surface of a marriage that was already, in every meaningful sense, finished. She was not pretending for his sake. She was buying time. During those 9 months, she took 3 steps that would later prove decisive in that courtroom. The first was opening a personal checking and savings account in her name only, at a bank across town from the one they used together. Funded by a portion of her own salary, she had quietly stopped depositing into their joint account. By the time proceedings began, she had set aside just over $14,000. Enough to cover her legal costs without needing a single dollar from him. The second was accepting a freelance project management contract she had been offered through a former colleague. Marcus had previously discouraged her from taking outside work, framing it as unnecessary given his income. She had deferred. She did not defer this time. She registered a small LLC in her name, accepted the contract, and within 4 months had invoiced her first client. The third step was the one she had thought about longest. She reached out to a forensic accountant, a specialist whose entire job is examining financial records with the same precision Claire had always applied to everything else. She did not retain him officially. She simply had one phone call, asked one question, and listened carefully to the answer. The question was, if a business owner wanted to hide income from a spouse, what would the records look like? He told her exactly what patterns to look for. She already had most of them. Marcus, meanwhile, had no idea. He continued his Wednesday evenings. He continued his phone calls with the door almost shut. He continued to speak about their finances in the vague, casual way he always had, as though the numbers were something Claire had never really understood. She had understood for years. She had simply never told him. Claire filed for divorce on a Monday morning in September. She had chosen Monday deliberately. Marcus had a major client presentation that afternoon, the biggest pitch of his firm's year. She knew this because she had, as she always did, quietly helped him prepare for it. She had reviewed the deck. She had reminded him about parking near the client's building. She had also arranged for the divorce papers to be served to his office at 10:15 in the morning, 2 hours before his presentation. She was not doing this to be cruel. She simply understood that a person who has never anticipated a consequence cannot prepare for one. His attorney called hers before lunch. Marcus was open to discussing a reasonable settlement. He hoped they could handle things without making it complicated. Patricia read her the message over the phone and then waited. "What would you like me to say?" she asked. Claire thought about the 8 years. The spreadsheets. The evenings spent on his business proposals while he watched TV. The Wednesday dinners. The door that was always almost shut. "Tell them we'll see them in court," she said. The discovery process took 5 months. Marcus's initial financial disclosure listed a business valued at $210,000 and personal savings of $31,000. The forensic accountant, appointed by the court after Patricia filed the motion, reviewed 4 years of business records. His assessment put the actual business value at $390,000. The undisclosed distributions, money Marcus had moved to his personal accounts without reporting, were confirmed at $176,000. Over 3 years. Marcus's attorney had a very difficult few months. When the final hearing arrived, the one I told you about at the very beginning of this story, Claire sat beside Patricia in that courtroom, and she listened to her husband tell a judge that she had contributed nothing, that she had nothing, that she was nothing. And then she opened the folder. The settlement that followed recognized her equal ownership of marital assets under Texas community property law. It recognized the undisclosed business distributions. It recognized the LLC she had built and the savings she had set aside. The judge signed the final decree on a Thursday afternoon. Claire walked out of that courthouse into bright September sunlight. She stood on the steps for a moment and just breathed. She did not feel victorious. She felt clear. The way a room feels after you have finally opened all the windows. In the months that followed, Claire moved into an apartment in South Austin, a neighborhood she had always loved and Marcus had always called inconvenient. She painted the living room herself, a warm off-white that she had picked out years ago and never bought. She bought a dining table from a local maker on Etsy and spent a Saturday morning putting it together alone, which she found more satisfying than she expected. Her LLC grew. By the end of that year, she had 4 ongoing clients and more inquiries than she could take on alone. She brought in a part-time contractor. She bought a new journal, the same kind she had always used. But this time, she did not write down what she was grateful for. She wrote down what she was building next. I want to ask you something before we close today. Have you ever had to build something quietly while someone else assumed you were standing still? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if this story meant something to you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it today. Now, there is one part of Claire's story I have not told you yet. 3 weeks after the decree was signed, she received a phone call she was not expecting. The caller was someone she had never spoken to, but she knew the name the moment she heard it. It was Jenna. And what Jenna told her in the next 5 minutes would change the shape of everything Claire thought she already understood. That is where we begin in episode 2. If you want to be here for it, subscribe. I will see you next week.